Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, DOC.
No
It's
problem, man.
to be here.
Tom, I spring this on everyone when we first start to catch people out. Well, it's not to catch people out, it's to give you a condensed answer. So
Okay.
in 10 seconds or less, what is it that you do?
Get people strong, make people better coaches.
Nice. I think these are getting shorter and shorter. The last few guests I've had on are like under 5 seconds. It's good. So get people strong and make people better coaches. Excellent. And a little bit of context, Tom, how did you get into the whole world of coaching in general? Because you're a coach in W10 at the moment. You have some online coaching going on. You have a new Dominate Athlete program you mentioned you launched just before we came on air. You have a lot going on. So if we rewind a few years, I suppose, where did it all start for you?
So my background initially was in football, professional football. I didn't actually ever make a senior appearance, but I was like playing in the reserves and stuff like that at Bristol City. And then I ruptured my ACL twice in a row. So I didn't play for 2 years. And then I got released from there. And obviously when you're out for 2 years doing rehab stuff, you spend quite a lot of time in the gym. And I sort of started to get into the gym then. And then I found out that you could become a personal trainer, and that kind of led me into exploring that a bit. But it was mainly the changes that I'd seen within myself from training that got me interested in becoming a coach. Basically, it was just like, wow, I've changed my body and my strength and just how I feel about myself through training, and it's a really powerful vehicle to do that. And I just wanted to share my passion with other people to help them do that.
Brilliant. How far back are we going then? Was that 10 plus years ago?
Yeah, like about 10, 11 years ago now.
Nice. And
So,
you became a personal trainer, and did you just go straight into like a personal training role within a facility, or where did you go from there?
So there was a new gym opening up near where I live, just like an independent gym, and I would go. I signed up as a member there, and then almost every session I go in there, I'd be asking them about, is there any jobs going or anything, like to do anything, and even if it was working the desk, I just wanted to get in. And initially was employed as like a traditional sort of gym instructor. You're on minimum wage type stuff, and you're running the desk, doing inductions with people, that kind of thing. And I would just approach people in there. It was in my local area, so I knew a lot of people, and I'd just be like, can I train you? Like, I just want to, for free, I just want to practice some stuff, or really cheap sessions. I remember like my first client that I used to train, who was like a friend of mine, he was like paying me like £10 a session, but I just wanted some experience and to practice, and also to use him to show other people what we could do. And I was doing that for 6 months to a year. Then I started picking up clients. I would do any classes and stuff like that. A funny fact actually is that I used to be a spin instructor. Now, if you know me now, you'd be like, no way. So I used to do spin a couple of times a week with £20 a session, group of like older ladies who used to come all the time. They're like regulars, and that funny times. And then over time I built up like clients like that, and then I was in a position then to go self-employed within that same gym. Then I was running my own business from there for about 4 years.
Oh, nice.
And then moved to London, and I've been there since.
Excellent. Spin instructor. So I've never actually spoke to someone who's done it like full on, but I can't help but feel, are they not like on the edge of burning out with the amount of classes that they have to physically do? Because the spin instructor doesn't just like coach, they're actually doing the session with them. Isn't that right?
Yeah, correct. Well, I only used to do 2 a week, so I just viewed it as I was getting paid to do some cardio.
Yeah.
But they're pretty intense, because it's like you just said, you're going through it as well. So you're setting the tempo, the environment, and the vibe, if you like, because you can't be oh, come on, we're going to go up a hill now. You're in it as well, you know?
I can
So,
imagine
yeah, it's full
doing
on.
3 to 4 hours of that, like 4 or 5 times a week. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it'd be intense.
I've heard of people doing it. But yeah, so Tom, am I right in saying that you've taken part in a bodybuilding show? Have I seen that before?
Yeah. Between how old was that? Between like 22 and 24, I competed in 5 natural bodybuilding shows.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever go back to it because of just the level of commitment and dedication it requires from nutritional aspects. I just don't think how my life is now that I'd be able to do that. Back then, I didn't have any responsibilities. I was living at home. It was like working for myself and just coaching people. And it was very much all about me and Tom, the athlete, and stuff. And it's a very intense process, but I learned a lot from going through that. And it definitely took more from it than the negative stuff.
Yeah, I was in a similar position a few years back, and I contemplated doing something in that realm like numerous times. But then I always, so I come from a small place, and we play one sport, and I always kind of had that in my mind where if I do this, I'm sacrificing my sport for that. And
what did you play? Gaelic football.
I play hurling.
Ah, okay. Actually, I think you told me that before. That sport is brutal.
Is that right? Anyone I talk to that is not from Ireland or isn't aware of it, they think it is, but to me it's normal because I've grown up, I've done it all my life, like, so it's no different to me. But yeah, like you're going to get, like, my hands are all permanently scarred. I've cuts and stuff, little things all over your body, and you'll get people with broken bones, but there's nothing too severe. I think I remember seeing stats for like some of the most dangerous sports in the world. And I remember seeing before somewhere that soccer has some of the most horrific injuries because they're like, you're literally snapping legs and snapping ankles and stuff, which is funny when you think about it. But yeah, you're playing with a long stick essentially. So think of like a bigger lacrosse stick with a bigger base on the end of it. And now it's a bit more, you could say, tightly regulated with referees and stuff, and right. Like wild swings are not as prominent as they were 10, 15 years ago. It was a lot more dangerous back then. People didn't even wear helmets years ago. Like, it was crazy. Wow. People would be getting stitched in the middle of games, and you just get stitches in the sideline or a bit of glue, and you're back out in the field again. But yeah, to me it's normal. But yeah, to other people it's just like, fuck, that sounds fairly rough. But so yeah, you're trying to do that, like, in your training 3 nights a week in the pitch. You might have a game. You're trying to juggle gym with that. So I always kind of had that battle. So that stopped me from doing it. But like you said, I had no responsibilities. I was living at home. I was young. I was able to kind of push the boundaries of stuff. But I did learn an awful lot about myself and nutritional side of things, the training side of things, even the mindset and perspective side of things, because you have to push yourself to get to that level of leanness, like, you know. And even though I never did that in crazy, I did have negative aspects to it. I did become a little bit obsessive. I did become avoiding social events. I did go down that realm. But again, I look at that nearly as a positive now, because I can nearly spot that happening with some of our clients if they do get too fixated on X, Y, or Z. And I have to draw people back to remind them that, like, your life is not about getting ready for a show or getting super lean. It's to do this so you can enjoy a better quality of life, or so that's kind of what your main goal is. Like, so interesting that you said that, man. But yeah, like, I suppose the training requirements to get muscle, to get strong, to get big, to get jacked, and no tan. If, Tom, I'm training for, and in both our minds, I'm training 3 times a week. I'm covering full body compound movements. I've followed influencers online. I've read bodybuilding articles. I've kind of done something consistently for over a year, and I've gotten strong. Which is kind of, that's exactly where I started. And it's exactly where I think a lot of young lads start. And then before they know it, they're mid-20s to 30s, and they're trying to do similar stuff, or they're getting more responsibilities in their plate, and they seem to make absolutely no progress, and they kind of fall out of love with the gym. What does somebody need to do to keep strength at hypertrophy gains rolling past that kind of beginner phase? Like what would be the first thing or that comes to mind when I say that to you?
I think first of all, it's like, are we like assuming that these people know, like, okay, they've followed programs and stuff like that, but do they actually know what they're doing, and are they actually applying themselves in the right way? Is I think like we'll no doubt get into like more of the technical programming and stuff like that, but I think just the I don't really like the word, but like the mindset towards it of just actually treating it as something where you're going in like a sport. It's like every time I go in the gym, that's game day, that's practice, and I think actually going in with the intent to get better is important, and I think that gets lost. People just sometimes view it as just ticking a box, even at that stage. And then if we get into the program and stuff, it's like, how long have you been doing what you've currently been doing? Are you sort of stuck doing similar stuff, and that you don't actually change too much from what you've been doing? And sometimes you need that change to, provide some adaptation that you perhaps, you haven't ever trained with reps above 12 or stuff like that, or you've always done the same exercises, and just trying some different stuff initially is a good approach, and mixing in some different bits here and there, I think is something that you can add in terms of like volume and stuff like that. That's very difficult to give specific advice, and as that's also going to, it's going to be dependent on the individual. But for example, if you have been doing something that is quite low volume, so let's say I work with quite a lot of powerlifters, many of them will come to me and they go, this is quite a specific example, but they go too far down the route of just their program is too specific, and that all they do is like barbell lifts, and they don't do much other work in terms of, there's not much single leg work, there's not much isolation work or assistance movements. It's just right, everything's percentages or RPE, and it's just all based on the bar, and they get sucked into going down this, and it's too specific. And I think coming out of that and having a bit of a broader base of training, and then as you get to whatever it is your goal is, as you're getting closer, then you can dial this in so that you're doing less stuff. That's something that I often have to do with a lot of people.
As you mentioned there, like it's obviously it's going to be completely specific, but maybe let's try and narrow it down then, so we can use maybe like a case study for an example or something like that. But like people I'll generally talk to, and I usually see it with lads more than ladies, because ladies just they're so open to learning.
Guys always have an ego.
Yeah, it's just like, well, even though they'll be getting like no results, or they're starting to hate the gym, or they're just resenting it, they're like, the answer I'll get is like, well, I'm doing my 3 days a week. I'm doing my squats. I'm doing my bench. I deadlift every now and then, yeah. And it's kind of the same. It's kind of the same conversation. And when I dig into that, then it's like, well, what does doing your squats mean? And we're like, well, I'm doing 3-4 sets of around 5 reps. And when they say that, and when I look into it, what they're really saying is that they do 3 sets of 5, and they have never really changed it that much. They might push 4. It depends on who they follow and what they've seen. You get some guys in off the deep end completely, where they're doing 4 days a week, everything is 5 sets of 10, and it's just like, what the hell is that? Like, but like for that, someone who's doing in their head 3 days a week, they're doing squats, they're doing bench, they're doing chin-ups, they're doing some row, they're doing dumbbell bench. They're not making any progress. They're starting to hit a wall with where their strength is going in terms of like the big lifts. What are some variables that they can start to look at to start making progress with that? Or what way do they need to approach their training from now on, I suppose? Like, obviously, I know you touched on there, you mentioned the word volume. We have, obviously, your frequency, how many days a week someone's training, and how many days a week someone trains is like, it's about breaking up that volume across the week, dependent on factors like, have they 3 days to train? Have they 4 days to train? Do they want to train 4 or 5? Do they want to train only 2? Do you know? So there's all these other elements, like lifestyle elements, that do come into it. But yeah, like if you have someone who's just, they have a kid in the way like myself, and you have a busy job, you like your training, but maybe you can't commit to 5 days a week. Maybe you can just about commit to 4.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to get strong. And I do, like, I have that overriding goal of, yeah, I'll get big,
Yeah.
but right now I just want to get stronger, but I just can't fucking do it. What do I need to do?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you give that's a very good point there, because you've been very clear about, okay, the goal is to get strong. I think that's important. First of all, is that the person, when you have limited time, you can only, it's difficult to juggle everything. So it's good to have a specific goal. That's a key point for me. First of all, so if we'd hit a sort of plateau and we weren't making progress with this person, the first thing that I'd look at is, yeah, how long have we been doing like those sets and reps, or that sort of that pattern of programming, and we'd look to change that. So I'm a big fan of having phases of training that have slightly different focuses, where we vary reps and sets, and also movements as well. So, you know, there's varying the movements for me, most of my people, I do program for like 4 weeks. So it might be over a 12-week block. We have pull squats for the first 4 weeks, and then we go into front squats for the next 4 weeks, and then we go to back squat, which is going to be our main exercise where we're judging our strength. So varying your exercise selection is something that I'm a big fan of, because what we also get there is we can push. It's another way of managing fatigue. So in pull squats, you're going to use a lot less weight than what you would for your back squat. So if we're doing 12 weeks consistently, just back squat and back squat and back squat, and even if we vary the rep ranges, that can feel quite tough. So it's quite nice to get a different stimulus. And then we don't also need as heavy load, which then gives you potentially, like, we're managing the fatigue a little bit better throughout the phase of training. There's going to be phases of training where the fatigue is going to be high, and that's part of it, because we're trying to create an adaptation. So to sort of like package that up, it's like, my first thing would be vary your exercise selection. It doesn't have to be totally different from your movement that you've been doing, but just perhaps you add a tempo to it, you added pulls, or you use a different bar or a different machine or something like that. That's something that I would include. The other one would be to increase your movement frequency. So if it fits across the 3 days, so let's say you've been squatting once a week for a year, can we push that up to twice a week in some pattern? One day is a little bit heavier, so it might be 3 sets of 3. The next day is 3 sets of 6, and it's a slightly different variation. So I find that is also something that tends to have quite a quick impact. Like, if you can handle it and recover from it, increasing frequency, especially in the squat and bench, I find tends to work. Deadlifting, not so much. If I was had someone who was training 3 days a week, I probably wouldn't have them perform another deadlift. It'd be more like a hip hinge, like an RDL, and we'd load that instead. So that would be my first sort of go-to, would be to increase movement frequency and vary exercise selection.
Yeah, you've just described the exact way we program here at the gym, and for our online clients that are on a 3 day week structure. And like, there's nothing to say that somebody can't do 3 main days a week and pepper in an extra, fucking arm pump day at home or something like that, or a conditioning day, or go for a run. When we say 3 days a week, we mean like 3 proper structured resistance training days. But like, even though we'll have someone start with us that might have never even stepped foot in the gym before, we're already applying principles that are going to benefit them long term, because we just want to get them into good habits. So you mentioned their phases, 4 to 5 week blocks. It's the exact same way we do things here. We'll have different movement variations. And even we find when somebody is getting super strong in a squat, all we need to start doing is that would flip that switch in their head. We're like, right, you have literally added weight nearly every session for the last few months. You can't continue to do that anymore. You're not just going to magically be squatting 300 kilos in 6 months' time. It doesn't work like that. So you're going to have to look at your progressions and your main lifts nearly on a monthly basis, or sometimes longer, depending on how advanced they are. But like an easy way to look at it is like, month to month, are you making progress?
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it has to be weight. If you got a full range of motion squat compared to 3 months ago, you were doing the same weight, but you were only getting, you were above parallel, for like, it wasn't as a full deep squat, for example. That's progression, because you can control that weight through entire range of motion, etc. Are you doing more reps with a certain weight? Are you doing so there's different ways to look at it, like, but when we get people to look at the macro level, the monthly level, they start to relax a little bit about it, and they don't end up trying to hammer themselves each week. And you even touched on it there, like with the fatigue build up over months as well, of like constantly trying to do heavy squats. And like the last block, 2 blocks ago, I done a strength phase for myself, and I train a couple of the coaches here as well, so I do their programming for them. We kind of follow the same stuff, and that block went really well. Got some nice lifts done in the squat and our main lifts, etc. Then we transitioned into a hypertrophy block, so just reps are up a lot higher. And sometimes I nearly forget when I'm programming for myself that, like, because my strength is not the main focus now, my intensity, so the weight in the bar and stuff like that, needs to come down slightly. I still end up just going too hard and too heavy. So now I'm on another block. So then 3 blocks later, and my squats are just not feeling great. I feel a bit burnt out with them. So I'm actually, this week I just came back and weighed and enjoyed the process rather than trying to hammer it. Like, so again, if I took my own advice and started back a little bit lighter at the start of a block, life is just made a lot easier. Like, so I'm jumbling that up a little bit, but what I'm getting at is bigger picture view in terms of how you progress, or how you deem progression. You touched on, as I said, moving variation, adding in pauses, adding in tempos, which is going to get you better at lifts as well. What about judging how hard you're pushing session to session and week to week, Tom? Because I do think it's a big one that we try to instill it early, so they get a general feel like, okay, week 1, I'm not meant to be going as hard as I fucking can, versus week 4 of a block or week 5 of a block, when we're trying to push the boundaries a little bit, because we're building up to that. How do you instill that into clients, would say? Or do you even, is that something that you cover depending on where someone's at in their training journey?
With general pop clients who are not specifically training for strength, no, like that would just be judged by, we still have phases of training and overall, like, okay, this is the blueprint. But if I'm seeing you in person 3 times a week, then I need the program there. It's important because we've got to have structure. But I can look at you and I can get a feel for what we're doing on that day. That's the ultimate of like auto-regulation, because you're there with the person. Yeah. But that's not for everybody that I work with. A lot of the people who are more specific to the topic that we're discussing here, like getting stronger, is in an online format. So numbers are important to me, and looking at videos. And most importantly, the feedback I get from them. How do you feel? Yeah, I feel great. Okay, we might extend this block by a week because you're feeling good and that weight moved really good. So let's keep pushing. And you're always in this position as the coach of like, how far can we push the envelope? But I've also got to know when to pull you back. And do you know what? Sometimes we don't know. It's like, I might have stopped someone a week early where they could have been really peaking for it. But I'd rather be safe than sorry on that. So I guess to sort of answer the question, that's sort of given a bit of a foundation to the answer, is that like, we'll look to increase, whether we're using, this again will be based on the individual. It might be that we increase percentages, and I purposely start someone at a percentage and a set and rep range that should feel easy in week 1. So if for those who are listening that are familiar with percentages, it's like, if we did 3 sets of 3 at 75%, that should be really easy, right? The next week might then be 3 sets of 3 at 70%. And that's still going to be relatively easy, but it starts to take it up a bit. And then we go to 3 sets of 3 at 85% of their max. That's going to be around about an 8 out of 10 level of effort. Week 4, 3 sets of 3 at 90%. This is the hard week. So like, out of the actual 4 weeks, we only get one really, really tough week. Well, pretty challenging week. And then we would then cycle through and adjust the sets and reps and the starting percentage again. And we would just go through like that. So it almost, whether we're using percentages, whether we're using RPE, or whether we're just using load, it tends to just go like this: up, back down a little bit, up, back down a little bit, up, back down a bit. That's kind of my method of how I program, is like I'm always going to be, volume and intensity are like this inverse relationship. So as volume comes down, I'm going to bring the intensity up, meaning we're using more load and we're working at higher percentages of our max. And I will just vary that across the let's say we're working over a 12-week block. So like week 1 to 4 will be higher volume and the intensity is going to be a bit lower. We gradually increase that, and then we back off a bit and come back up for the next 4 weeks, and it just gets, the reps start to come down as we go through the program. And that tends to be my general approach.
Yeah, I'm very similar in that you're dead right. Like if we're coaching clients in front of us, we can see like what they're capable of on that day, what's their best for that day, what they're happy with that day, et cetera, et cetera. So we can coach based on what we have there and then. And people that are training, like not with a coach with them in the gym, it's a different story. So we have to give them some guidelines to go by, so they're not, for me, it's like holding them back nearly, and teaching them that that's the normal thing to do. That's how we train. You don't go to your sport training and try to go 100% every single time you go. So you mentioned about manipulating percentages, and have done it with some clients in the past, dependent on like if they really are that numbers driven and they really want to dial in on that. But like for the large majority of the time, we would go by RPE, or reps in reserve. Kind of same thing. So you said week 1 will feel easy. We're along the same lines. And then from week 2 to 4, we'll judge it by a couple of reps in the tank. Like a couple of reps in the tank genuinely is super hard. Like that shouldn't be easy. But
and that's where the majority of training should be. It's around about there.
Yeah.
And you know, if you go too far, like if everything's always like 1 rep in reserve, or like no reps in reserve, or RP 9, 10s, like you just can't maintain that output over a long period.
No.
So
and you will start to not enjoy the process, like
unless
you're 22 and you don't really care and you love hammering yourself and you're like, creatine, protein. We're not talking about those people. Like we're talking about consistent training that you actually enjoy. And in the past, I used to, like, even when I used to kind of come out of that mindset, I'd start a new training block and I'd nearly feel bad because it was so easy for the first week. Why am I feeling bad? Because I really enjoyed that and it was handy, and I'm like, I can't wait for next week. I'm definitely going to be able to go heavier on X, Y, and Z, or definitely be able to do more reps on this, and this. But like I've really started to fine tune that the last number of years as well, in that there's a fine line, like a 5 kilos and an extra lift for me could just floor me if I'm not careful. So you have to really fine tune where you're at with that. If I'm not, like, if I'm not super in detail with percentages and stuff, and if I am only going by RPE and I'm judging it block to block, I do have to be careful with the load I have in the bar versus the reps I plan to do, but then it'll always be regulated by that, how many reps I have in the tank. So like week 1 from go
on that, it's like a method that I use with a lot of clients is actually providing ranges. So RP is obviously like a form of auto regulation, but RP is still related to, you can still correlate that with percentage, and that they're going to use, you're going to have, if I say, let's say your max is 100 kilos, right, for 1 rep on your squat. So if I give you an RP 8 for a single, like that's still going to be around about 80 to, or 85 to 90% of your max. So it doesn't matter which method you choose to use. It's about what works for the individual. But I like to give people a ranges. So even if I'm prescribing a percentage-based program, it will be like, okay, we're going to work between 70 and 75%. This would be the weights that you use. So there's like a range of 10 kilos, or so let's say 5 kilos either way. For most people, it still allows for, you might go in 1 week and you don't feel great because that happens, and it's not possible, as you said earlier, that we can't keep making progress week to week. So sometimes I do like to give people arrange to work with to factor that in, because there's also then the psychological element of them feeling, oh, if I didn't hit that I'm failing, or that it's gone wrong. It's like, you might have just not had much sleep that night. And we talk, personally, we talk about this with general pop clients who just want general fitness stuff, but the same rules do apply to people who are a bit more into their training. Like, if I haven't had a good night's sleep and stuff like that, I may do 2 sets instead of 3. And you as the coach, you also have to consider this, that any program needs to be adaptable along the way. And I think that's the fault where some coaches get stuck, is they're too rigid with the structure that they put in place.
I see it as well, that clients that get onto us, I followed X program in the past, and when we actually get a look at it, it's like super rigid, super detailed in like, this is the exact numbers that you have to do.
People think that's what they need, which is that's part of the problem sometimes.
Like, if you like, you mentioned sleep there, and like sleep and stress is so big. Like, and when I get shitty sleep, it immediately impacts my training. I'm even last week, I think I rested an extra 2 days in the middle of the week, just because I knew that, right, if I went deadlifting today, I'll either have to come way down the weight or it'll just be a slog. And I'm like, nah, fuck that, I'll just wait 2 days. And I did. I planned to wait 1 day first, but then I was just still wrecked the second day. So I'll leave it until Friday. But when we are aware of like, that's okay to do, it just makes life a little bit easier. It's like giving someone a protein target, saying, oh, your protein target's 150 grams of protein. You have to lay that on the button every single day. And it's not the way it works. Like, like we give people
145 and they're like, oh, I failed today, I didn't hit my protein. Like, it really doesn't matter. And actually, and that comes back to what you said at the start about this sort of like long-term sort of goal and where we're going. It's the same principle. It's like, in the grand scheme of things, if you don't add, we know that it's not possible to keep adding 2.5 kilos each week. It's like, we have to be able to step back and view the bigger picture. I think that's really important.
No, it is, man. And you touched on one thing as well that I wanted to re-highlight as well, is I give you a scenario and you're like, right, the first thing you said there is that you have a specific goal. I think too many people are trying to do too much stuff. I want strength. I want to get big. I want to get lean. I want to get fast. I want to run a marathon. It's like, right, what is the fucking goal? Like, And I had this very conversation with one of my online guys at the start of the year, in that like, he wants to get bigger. He wants to get bigger. So he wants to gain muscle tissue, but he also wants to increase his cardio. He also wants to increase his running, and he also wants to only train 3 days a week for 45 minutes. And I had to have the conversation, like, because he had it in his head, I can only commit to 45 minutes. So the first conversation was, right, can we push that 5 to 10 minutes more? Because if we do, it'll allow us to get more workload in. And I had to really question him on what is the cardio like? And all the cardio was that he believes, because he follows, he's obviously influenced by people he follows and maybe people he works with. But no, he was just like, I have to be fit. I have to be fit. And I'm like, by training alone, you're going to be quote unquote fit. Are you going running a 5K? Like, he doesn't run, he doesn't play sport, so he just has this belief in his head. And I think it is a big thing. Like, if you probably took 10 people off the street and like, right, what you need to do to start losing weight in terms of exercise, they'd be like, oh, I go for a run or go for a walk. Like, how many people are going to turn around and say, I need to resistance train? A few will, but there's going to be running and walking put in there a lot too. But it was just, basically, we had the conversation. I flipped it on its head, and now we're actually going for a 4-day week approach. We've left it at the 45 minutes, but I've kind of planted the seed where it's kind of like, look, don't be stressing out if you go over 45 minutes. Just let it happen. If you get to 45 minutes in and it's productive and good and you're building progress each week, great. And obviously then we're not pushing too hard on the calorie side, because I am conscious of, he just goes hammer on the calories, he's just going to gain fat too quick, et cetera, if he's not putting in the volume like in the gym that he needs to do. Bear in mind, this is at home. But we had to really make the goal the goal. What is the goal? Because people, again, are just trying too much stuff. And then once we have that, we can look at other things. And it is hard to have chats around this and give specific answers because it's so individual. Like what Tom can handle in the gym is probably 30% more than I can handle in the gym, because I just have so much shit going on right now. My head's just not in it fully. Do you know, it's different scenarios for different people. And that's why comparing yourself to people is silly. It's stupid, and it's not going to be productive. And that's another whole realm we could go down, Tom.
Especially see that in the exact sort of goal that the exact type of person that you just mentioned, who wants to do all these things, and they perhaps see, I think, you know, you look at the top CrossFit guys, or people that you know, intermediate level CrossFit people who are fit in the terms of like that they can aerobically, well, no, they're just fit in that specifically they can do some stuff on the airline and the ski ergs and stuff like that, and they could also have a decent level of strength. But lots of these people have been training a long time, and they do have fundamentally this base level of strength and technical competency when it comes to lifting weights, and it still forms a large part of their training. They didn't gain muscle by doing loads of ski erg intervals and AMRAPs. They built their bodies by lifting weights and getting stronger. And I think this gets lost, and people follow individuals who do this stuff and expect that they're going to look the same without actually understanding and respecting the time and effort that these people have put in to build their base. And like you said, it's like, if you've only got 45 minutes, 3-4 days a week, what's the priority? What's your hierarchy of, you know, what's going to get you to your goal? It's like, for me, that always comes back to strength training forms the base of the pyramid. Strength training is also going to improve your aerobic fitness. Your heart rate is elevated. Like, you will get fitter by doing it. Now, of course, if your goal is to run a faster 5K or run a marathon, or just, you know, you're more inclined to that way of training, then we just need to revisit of like you said, what is the goal? And then it's a quote that I like from Dan John is like, once you have your goals, like, the goal is to keep the goal. Because people struggle to do that as well. And that's actually probably the most important point in everything that we've discussed today. It's like, those people who make the most progress are the ones who can keep that focus for a long period of time and not get distracted by new stuff, or as one of my friends, JC, says, don't get done by the decoys. It's like, where you just get dragged into doing stuff that's not actually what you should be doing.
Yeah, 100%. It's very easy to get lost in fancy programs and thinking that, oh, if I do this, it's going to be what I need to gain the slab of muscle that I want to gain. But yeah, it's shiny object syndrome. Yeah, like I know it might be hard for someone to decipher some of the stuff we talked about, but I think what that really shows as well is that your average person going to the gym trying to get stronger and bigger we're not meant to know this stuff. You're not a personal trainer. You're not a coach that's going to have this knowledge in your back pocket. And I think it always comes back to highlighting how important having a coach is. Like we touched on some fundamental stuff there, like having the goal, viewing your progress on a macro level. If you are past that kind of beginner phase of a year of consistent training, 6 months to a year of consistent training, how hard you're quote unquote pushing each week, your variety of exercises. Like, there's 3 to 4 big things there already that somebody can go and plug away and put in. But I had some other things here, Tom, that I'd like to ask you. What has worked well for you over the years in terms of training adherence? So like actually sticking to your training. Like, I'm sure you've went through periods where you just couldn't be bothered, or you started to, let's say, not have as much joy for training every single day, or not every single day, but every single week. I'm sure you've had lulls in your training and stuff like that. But like, what has helped to keep you consistent over the years?
I'd say up until lockdown, I'd always train consistently at least 3 times a week, on average for 9-10 years. And lockdown was actually the first time that there was a few weeks where I only trained once and things like this, and I was like, wow, what's like going on? And that actually made me sort of dig a little bit deeper into the reason of why I sort of train. which I think I've kind of forgot a little bit. So sort of what has worked with me with keeping up that consistency the whole time is I've always been quite goal driven, and I'd always like set myself goals, whether it is competing in a competition, like bodybuilding or powerlifting, or if it was just always like, okay, this is my phase of training now. I know that I'm working towards this, but also actually when you've had like injuries and stuff like that as well, I try and tell myself all the time, like, being able to train is a privilege. Some people don't have that access. Like, just be grateful that you can go to the gym today. Be grateful that you have a body that allows you to do this stuff, and that we should really appreciate that. And buying into that is a big driver for me. And I'm just a much better human being, both professionally and personally, with my wife and daughter, when I train. Like, I'm just better. Like, I need it to. I'm just less like, yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think that it's something that you have to make this deal with yourself, that it's just non-negotiable. It's good for you, and you know, we're here to improve ourselves. I just look at it as like it's sort of self-improvement, self-care, and that's what sort of drives me to make sure that I'm consistent with it.
Yeah, like,
how about you?
Yeah, very similar, man. I think it's only when I got to a certain age, like only the last, what do I know? I'm 30 in 3 weeks. Like the last 2 to 3 years, I've had that conversation a few times when a few things that got on the last couple of years have just added extra stuff to my plate, and which adds a little bit of extra stress, and sleep gets hit, and you might miss meals here and there, and it all adds to like your training getting affected, basically. And I had to really sit down to see, like, why am I doing this? Like, because when I was 19 to 25, it was kind of about just looking better naked, getting jacked. Yeah. And I don't get me wrong. I still want to be big and strong late.
Yeah.
As long as I can train, I do want to do that. Like, I always have a goal of, I want to push by the boundaries of how much I can do and that kind of side, but I've relaxed on it a little bit. I've kind of made it more of a habit more than anything. Like, and even though yes, training has to nearly become a habit, if I have a goal and I have a specific goal that I want to hit in terms of my training or body composition, I don't get overhyped about it anymore. I don't, like, if I don't hit the fucking thing, who cares? Like, you know, I'll just go and hit it again if I want to, or I'm just not as hyped about it, or I don't make it as big of a deal. And if I miss a day, it doesn't matter. If I have a shit train a week, it doesn't matter. And I've really turned to fine tuning as well. Like, the stronger I get, it has a direct correlation in terms of like how hard my sessions start to become. And like I said to you earlier on, I'm not afraid to pull back, even though I know I could probably train at a 5 to 10% higher level in certain things. I'm preferring to train lower than that now.
Yeah.
And again,
there's a cost to it, isn't there?
Yeah, I think for me as well, I always use the excuses that I'm a tall person. I'm 6'2" and I've long legs. So when I push deadlifts and I push squats, my back is fried, man. I'm absolutely fried. And deadlifts just fucking zap me anymore. Like, a few weeks ago in the middle of a hypertrophy block, I started my block for sets of 6 at 170. And the next week I went to 180. I was like, what am I doing? Like, just silly. Like, you know, I should have stayed at the 170 and just progressed it over the whole block and maybe try and bang out an extra rep or two. But I'm at that stage where I have to be really careful with that, or otherwise I'll start to just dread my training sessions as well. Like, I used to always dread. I used to dread my deadlift days, or no matter what was after the deadlift, I was dreading that day because I used to go so hard in the deadlift, and I'd be fried after it. But mentally, physically, my back then might flare up a few days later. But yeah, I prefer to train at a lower level than that, just because, again, I want training to be something where I leave feeling better from it, and it adds to my life. And you said about it just makes you better as a human, and I live by that to the day I die. It's just fact. Like, I think I heard it on Danny Lennon's podcast, Sigma Nutrition, a couple of years ago, where he said resistance training is probably the single biggest thing you can do for your health. And I firmly do believe that, like, there's just so many benefits. It's unbelievable. And it has so many knock-on effects then to other things that people don't know until they do it, and until they do it consistently as well. Like,
Yeah, and see results, right? That's
yeah,
the thing.
It's the progress alone from it too. Like you when you see progress and you build on that progress and you look back 5 years. If you're somebody who's trained for over 5 years, look back 5 years and it's motivating, like, you know.
Yeah, I think the other thing about being consistent for me is that a large part of my identity is attached to me training, and also just pride as a coach. Like, you don't have to be the strongest or have a set of abs to be a coach or to be a good coach. It certainly doesn't matter. But in my opinion, there is an element that you have to be in some kind of shape and you have to train. Like,
I do agree with that.
Okay. Yeah. It's my personal value in that you have to walk the walk if you're going to talk the talk. And like I said, it doesn't mean that you have to be the strongest coach. You don't have to have abs, but you've got to train. Because how can you promote fitness and health when you don't do it yourself? Like, that doesn't sit well with me. So that's a big driver for me as well.
Yeah, identity. It's something that we do 90-day goals workshops with our clients here as well, and at the core of them, they're very, very simple. It's just getting focused for the coming 90 days to see, right, what kind of specific goals do they have. And it's not just for body composition or training. We actually try to just not brush past them, but we help them set those goals. But we try to incorporate the bigger picture as well for people. And something that I've talked about a lot in those workshops over the last year is what you talked about there in terms of identity. And I think James Clear really opened my eyes up to that, because like every single habit and action that you do is like a vote for the type of person you want to become. And I think if people are struggling with why they train or why they want to train, because let's be honest, some people just don't like the gym. They have a bad experience with it. They're not athletic. They don't feel athletic. And you know, if you're trying to start that in your 40s, it can be very, very, very tough. So I think if somebody set themselves, like, what is the core identity of you as a person? Like, do you want to be someone who is strong and healthy later in life? That's a massive identity. And I think just even having that, it's like a little driving force behind, right, I'm going to do my 2 or 3 days training this week.
Yeah, definitely.
And again, I think there's big factors there. Like, it's all well and good want to train to get bigger and stronger. And we know all the science behind that as coaches, and we should. But sticking to it, enjoying it, it comes back to that. Like, it comes back to being able to stick to it and being able to enjoy that process. And that's probably the biggest thing that we work on for our clients. If you can stick to something, if you can enjoy it, the gains will come as long as everything else is falling into place. Miss a few days here and there, don't beat yourself up. Like you said, if you train once during lockdown, like, if you look back now, it means fuck all in the grand scheme of things, because you're still consistent overall. Do you know?
Yeah. You know, I liken it to, you know, it's like a bank account. It's like, I've made 9 years of deposits of 4 days a week. It's like, okay, I can afford a few weeks of withdrawing just once a week. Now, of course, if I do that for too long, I'm going to keep withdrawing and I run out and I start going the other way. So you've got to, you know, you get compound interest from training regularly, which then gives you a bit of leeway to, I'm not saying you should do this, but you shouldn't feel bad if you miss. You only get 3 sessions instead of 4. Like, it's not, like you said, in the grand scheme of things, if you're consistent, it's okay if that happens occasionally. Life happens. That's normal. Yeah,
like, it's you have to be ready for that as well. Sorry, no, there's a big bad glare coming in on top of me here.
That's right.
I have a halo over me. Yeah, like, if you were to say that to me when I was 20 to 25, even, you could say, like, I would kind of like, but it would kind of fall on deaf ears a little bit, because training was something that I did even when I went away on holiday, you know, fooling myself into thinking that, I'm doing it because I'm going to feel better after. When really, like, I would have much preferred to lie on the beach and drink pints or drink cocktails for the day. Like,
see, you know? I would still want to train on holiday.
Well, look, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. There is I'm not trying to say now I just go away and don't purposely train, not at all. But I don't feel guilty if I decide not
Yes.
to train that day, or if we're
Yeah.
in a place where there's no training equipment and I just couldn't be
Yeah.
arsed doing a bodyweight workout. Yeah, I'm not going to,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not
Yeah.
going to
Yeah.
force
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
But I do, like, let's be clear, I do enjoy training, and it's again, it's part of me as a person. But I used to be like, if I was doing 4 or 5 days a week and then I went away on the holidays, like I would try and get that in on a week's holiday, and I just
And you're researching like gyms and stuff around the area. Like I remember once going somewhere and it was like, I think I got like a 25-minute taxi to go to a gym to go and train. It's like,
wow,
yeah, just because it was like, oh, I've got to do it. Yeah, I probably.
And look,
wouldn't
again,
do that now.
at the time, like I did it and I did feel better for it, but I can't help but feel that it took away a little bit from some of those holidays. Whereas now I have a much more relaxed approach to it, and I know that, right, if I go away for 2 weeks here and if I only train once or twice, it's fine.
Yeah.
But if I get opportunity or windows to go a little bit more, I can get 30 minutes in here or there, great, I'll do it. Yeah, it's funny how you morph and change as you get older and get a bit of sense about you. But last question I want to round up, but I have it here, Tom, and we probably touched on it a little bit, but we talked about your why behind training. Have you any training philosophy, or like if I was to ask you, Tom, what is your training philosophy? What would you say that is?
For myself, or just like for as a coach?
As a coach. Yeah, as a coach.
I think, I don't know, actually, summarize this. I know what it is, but not just trying to summarize it so that I articulate it right. I think it would be, first of all, with like, I want anybody I work with is like, moving with quality is key. It's like, I'm not interested in what you lift if you can't do it properly. So at the core of everything that I do is like, I want good technique. I want good movement quality, because that will help us to make progress over the long term. And I think that the other point would be that like strong or getting stronger applies to everyone, and everybody should buy into that. That, you know, it doesn't have to mean being a powerlifter. It doesn't have to mean being, having the biggest muscles. It's like everybody can benefit from being strong. And I think that those two things, good technique and focus on getting stronger, if you do those two things in your training, you can go a long way. And be consistent. I think that would be it. It's like consistently move well and have the attitude to get stronger.
Nice. It's something that we didn't even touch on much, but it's probably something that we address with it is something that we address with every single client that gets onto us, is their movement quality. There's no point trying to add on top of dysfunction or top of bad movement quality. You tidy up someone's movement quality, they start to progress a little bit easier, a little bit faster as well. Like it's funny.
Yeah, and on that, not to go off on one, but like, when people come in, I've got back pain, or I've got this, and the physio or someone's told me I've got to do these special exercises, and it's like, if we just get you moving properly and get you stronger, guess what? Your back feels better. Like there's no magic corrective exercise. It's like corrective exercise is you just doing the exercise properly with good technique and progressively loading it to what you can handle.
Movement is medicine. And it's something that I think you only experience when you're coaching people in person. The amount of people that have had, there's a couple of people springing to mind already. Like we had one lady with very bad shoulder issues for years, and she wanted to join us because her husband was here, and she didn't, because that held her back, and she was crippled in pain, like couldn't sleep properly or nothing, until I reassured her that we can train around things so we don't make them worse, and we can provide, we can outsource you to someone that can help you with like rehab stuff, and we can put that stuff into the program, whatever needs to be done. And we ended up finding out that she could do a lot of stuff. And we just trained around the shoulder. And before we knew it, within a few months, the pain had gone. And then she was
Yeah.
just training normal for the last 4 years.
And on that, Dave, it's like she's coming and she's got a load of other benefits from doing all these other movements at the same time. And before she's doing nothing, it's like, there's almost so much you can do. And like you said, it's like after a few months, she was like out of pain, man. And you didn't do any. It's not like you spent a whole session going over rehab stuff with a band every session. It's like we just trained.
Yeah, it's the stuff we do anyway. Yeah. It's like the conversation we have with people saying, is Pilates good? Is yoga good? Is TRX good? Is this good? And I'm like, well, we do bits of that in our training anyway, because we believe that certain movements are applicable to, like, we pepper in mobility into our actual workout. So like, as well as having a proper structured workout, we pepper in mobility stuff into some days of the week as well. So we're constantly working in those areas, and we do that to kind of cover all bases for people. And we've proven it by people coming in with hip issues, back issues, shoulder issues, and within months of just consistent training, they're gone. And that just speaks volumes. So it does. Tom, that was fantastic, man. There's a lot of stuff to digest there for people, and for people to ponder about if you are not making progress, or as much progress as you think you can with your training. And if you have been training for over a year consistently, there's a lot of stuff there to think about and make you, hopefully help you make a plan moving forward. But Tom, where can people find out more about you? Where would you like us to send them?
Instagram's the best place, and you can find me at liftstronglookstrong.com.
As well. That's your name on Instagram?
I do have a website, but I tend to post more regularly and content through Instagram than I do on like blogs and stuff like that on my site. So yeah, Instagram's a bit more, I'm a bit more active on there.
Perfect. I will pop that all in the show notes page for you anyway, where you can find the links to give Tom a follow, guys. Tom, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime, mate. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.